Okay, good morning, everybody. Deborah Ivanoff, the Being Coach, and here this morning with me is Jackie Pasciak, Being the Solution Instructor. You all know that Jackie has resurrected the original curriculum of Being the Solution, and we're offering it here at the Being Coach. We've already had one class start, and we're looking forward to a possible class coming up. So in the meantime, Jackie and I are meeting at the appointed time that the new class chances are will be, and we're discussing some of the tools from Being the Solution. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning.
Now, this morning we said we would be talking about the change process, which I, of course, always love to talk about because people don't really understand the change process, I don't think. Or let me put it this way. It was one of the things I originally did not understand at all. And as I've said in past conversations that we've had, it's the biggest area that I used to let myself get derailed. Not everybody does, but I did. And so, of course, I've taken a special interest in it. Jackie, you've had a lot of experience. You've watched a lot of people go through Being the Solution. What do you see happens to people in the change process? Where do you see that people are making the most changes when they come to understand what the change process is really about? What do you think?
I think I got the question. It's not coming in too clearly,
Oh,
but
you want me to try it again?
sure.
So basically, I've noticed that it makes a really big difference. It made a really big difference to me to understand what's really involved in the change process. You know, I used to think, even after reading Think and Grow Rich, I used to
Mhm.
think, I changed my mind, I changed my reality. But that was not what I was experiencing. I was experiencing all this other stuff, and I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. So I kept starting over, you know?
Mhm.
And I know it's not
Sure.
the same for everybody, but I know that it is a very big aha when people come to understand that the change process can be a little bit more, I don't know, what would be a good word? Tricky?
Sure. Yeah,
It's kind of
people don't really,
go ahead.
yeah, I don't think people, I think that even, whether we read about it, whether we hear about it, whether we, subscribe to a program about it, anything we want to learn is change. And I don't think we realize it's such a, completely immersive experience, It's like even if you're changing the way you go to work
Mhm.
every morning, it's like there's so many things that could change as a result of it. And or if you want to change the shape of your body, people don't realize all the stuff that goes with it. Everybody just says, just do it. And we think, okay, it's going to be that easy. Just go ahead and do it. But then, wait a minute, nobody told us about all the emotions that would go with it. People, if I start becoming my ideal weight, then I start getting more attention. And then that attention might kind of put you off. You're not prepared for that. And nobody really kind of goes into, well, be prepared for all the things that could happen when you step out of the box and start changing something.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That was such a huge part of what shifted for me so many years ago when I first took Being the Solution, and continued to shift even after I was teaching it, probably for you too. Yeah? Would you say that's true, Jackie?
Mhm. Yeah, it really did. And still, it kind of amazes me every time that when you decide to change something, it's not just like you get what you want. It's sometimes you get some things that you don't want, or you get some things that you didn't expect. It's not always a straight path, and so it could be easy to get derailed. It could be easy to be stressed even when you're making positive change.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up because I found that in my own life, and I've seen it in clients' lives over and over, that usually there's something that is holding our reality in place, right?
Hmm.
So when I change my mind, well, I think it's more about just changing our minds. I think it's about changing all those things you mentioned. It's about changing our thoughts, our words, our deeds, our feelings, our philosophies. It's about changing a lot of things, really. We change our very being. And then what I've found is that those things that have been holding the old reality in place, they like come floating to the surface like big time. You know, like, well, if you're going to, if you want the change, you have to do something with these things that have been anchoring the old reality. And that, to me, that's in the past. I always thought I was doing something wrong when those big, ugly things popped up. Now I'm like, yeah, I must be on my way. I wasn't that way before. I used to like really hate that part. But now I can rejoice in it, and also with other people as well. But do you find that, Jackie, well, how do you find it for you? How do you find it for you? When you decide you're going to change something, what do you find happens?
Well, I think a mixture of things as well. I mean, sometimes you get the positive or the motivation, and then other times it's, you get something I get something completely unexpected that's um where did that come from? Or I didn't realize. It's kind of like what you were saying, the anchors.
Yeah.
You don't know what those anchors are until you try to do something different, and then you go, I didn't realize that was an anchor.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I'd been teaching for maybe a year. I hadn't been teaching that long. I've been taking for quite some time. I've been teaching for a year, maybe a year and a half. And Daryl asked me when we were speaking, Daryl Rutherford, he's the author of Being the Solution. He asked me, he said, do you have any of the same friends you had 2 years ago? And that kind of brought me up short. I really had to think about that. And there were a couple I still had, but most of the friends I had had even 2 years before, it's not that we weren't friendly, but we were not active in one another's lives. We just, there is something to that shifting energy. And I think that's what a lot of people fear. I think people care about the people in their life, or they care about certain things, certain ways that they have been being. So, for instance, won't name names, but sometimes people really like their snacks. They don't want to give up their snacks. They want to lose weight. They want to look a different way, but they don't want to give up their snacks, right?
Mm, right.
And it's not that I have to give up my snacks. It's that you and I have had this conversation before, right, Jackie? It's not about taking things away. It's about refining our preferences to match what we really, really next want. Our snacks become different. I'm using snacks, but it could be anything. It could be those people that we previously enjoyed gossiping. I don't know about you, but gossiping's been a thing of my past for many, many years. But I remember pretty strongly a time in my life where I actually had the conscious thought, this doesn't feel good anymore to hang out and be like talking with people about other people. Just doesn't feel good. I'm not going to do this anymore. This doesn't feel good to me. Doesn't feel like it's good for me. Have you ever had anything like that changed that much for you?
Oh, sure. I mean, all kinds of things. I've definitely made a lot of changes in my diet over the years, but it's not because necessarily I said, I mean, sometimes I just said, I'm just going to see what it's like without sugar. And
Exactly.
and then I experience it, and then I find that going back to it just doesn't, I used to eat fast food, and now I can't even stand the
I
smell of
can't
it.
even imagine that, Jackie.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you can eat. Well, I ate a lot of things when I was in my teens
sure,
and 20s. A lot
sure,
of really nasty things, and now
sure.
I can't even imagine. So yeah, some things fall off, but sometimes when you're trying to make a conscious change about something, it becomes it can be challenging.
Oh my goodness. I remember many, many years ago, I made a conscious decision to be aware about my money and balance my checkbook every day. Because when I didn't, things got a mess and I bounced checks and I just said, no more. I'm going to be awake about my money. I'm going to know what I have every day. I'm going to balance my checkbook every day. I got that way back then. I got Quicken and, I kept my little check register. And, the minute I did that, All financial Hades broke loose. And I just made the biggest mess of my finances ever. But I stuck with it. And it's still a habit I have today. I still check my checkbook every single day. And it's a good thing because sometimes things sneak through there that I didn't approve or I thought were taken care of. And so it's a really good habit that I started many years ago. And it was a total mess before I turned it into a habit. And I think that that's what you're talking about too. Sometimes some things can pop up, kind of kick back, like I said, those anchors, those funny things that kind of hold things in place.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I heard a story once about this couple that all of a sudden they decided to start keeping track of all their expenses on a daily basis, everything they spend, and they entered it into a system. And the wife ended up losing like 30 pounds, and
That's a great example. Yeah.
because she was going to the snack machine for candy and pop every day or maybe twice a day.
Oh.
And then she said, I couldn't tell my husband that that's what I was doing. So, you know, all of a sudden she lost 30 pounds and then she had to, she was able to confess that's why.
Oh, that's a really good example. So the awareness about money brought about that. I had a similar thing a couple years ago. I started being really aware of, Daryl loves to talk about prosperity and scarcity consciousness, right? And I didn't really think of myself as a person who really dwelt a lot on scarcity. So it was a real confront to me to realize that there was an area of my life where I was always affirming scarcity, always. And it was around time. I was always complaining about not having enough time
Interesting.
in my mind. And once I had that awareness, like this woman had this awareness that that's where her money was going. Once I had this awareness, I could see how just holding or affirming the quote reality, right? I was holding it as if it was real.
Mm-hmm.
And when I gave that up, when I said, wait a minute, any area of my life where I'm thinking scarcity of people who love me, scarcity of money, scarcity of health. I mean, any area we carry scarcity in, that oozes out and just like, clouds everything else, doesn't it?
Oh,
And
sure.
it
Yeah.
made a
And
huge difference. And like we said, it touched every area of my life, right? And when I started cleaning it up, originally it made a bigger mess, which doesn't have to happen. I refuse to believe that has to happen. But in my case, it did happen, so I just went
mhm.
with it. But I stayed with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to be open. Like, for example, maybe that person was always trying to lose weight one way, and then all of a sudden the money issue helped her do it. Um, it's good to stay open to the possibility that it doesn't always have to be a mess, and but yet be prepared that it might be.
Exactly. That was really my philosophy, that from working all those years with being the solution, is I learned how to just be, this isn't how it has to be, but here it is. So let me deal with what's here. And, so many changes I've made throughout my life were originally because of my dedication to my kids and wanting to be seen as I wanted to see myself as a person that they could see as someone that they were, proud of or regarded well. And that definitely motivated me. But of course, aiming for that created so many positive changes in my life. And I'm delighted by that. There was a lot of drama in my life when I first found Daryl. There was a lot of drama in my life, right? And I really didn't want that drama. So that's what I didn't want. So I had to keep aiming for what I did want and why I wanted it. And boy, I just live a completely different life now. And it has slowly shifted. And many of the people I hang out with are completely different. It's interesting, Jackie, you and I have known each other for most of that time.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But you've kept changing. I've kept changing. You've kept changing. Our roles have changing. Here we are back again, working in a whole new way. And I think that that's so many people are afraid they're going to lose the people they care about or the people they love. And in truth, we just don't know what's going to happen. You know, things can cycle through, people can drift away, they can come back, they can get stronger. You know, I think that fear
Hmm.
is of losing control of that process, don't you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, there is always okay, it's okay for this to change, the thing that I don't want, but everything else should stay the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I do find that when we can just like loosen our grip on that just a tiny bit, then even better things can happen. That's actually what I see. I don't know about you, but that's what I see in clients. That's what I see in students, that when we can loosen that, you know, grip on it has to happen a certain way, change has to happen in a certain way, then over and over, I see people get something that's delightful and unexpected, and they so totally prefer over what they said. They just didn't know it was possible. What about you? What do you
Right.
see?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think the more you can sort of let go and say, okay, this was an anchor and let it all go, then sometimes, you don't have to lose the relationships that you have. They can
Right.
transform, they can become better. Um, there's no guaranteed path as far as, okay, this is how you change, because there's so many different elements that are just completely unmeasurable that, you know, so many possibilities.
Well, in fact, that's one of the parts of being the solution of the curriculum that I really appreciate and enjoy, the book and the curriculum, is that idea of renegotiating our relationships. And to me, that has always signified renegotiating our relationships with other people and then renegotiating our relationship with ourselves. And I
Hmm.
really like that because as a mediator, I see that this is an area so many people get into conflict and upset, is they begin changing and the people around them are like, what? You know, where is this coming from? I mean, nobody hates anybody more than a reformed anything. Have you noticed? Like someone goes sugar free and now they want the whole house to be sugar free, and everyone else is like, I am not on the same page with you yet, you know? So I like that idea of really renegotiating our relationships. If I'm the one who's changing, I take responsibility for saying, like, you know, if I said to you, Jackie, you know, we had this agreement that we were going to teach this class together, and I'd like to talk about maybe shifting that a little bit. That's so much better than being like, oh, I've had something come out of my mind, and you should know where I am. But how could you, you know? So when we
Right.
change and grow, I think it's really a very responsible thing to be able to, in some way, verbalize or communicate that to somebody else and ask for their support rather than expect it. And also let them know that I'm aware, I have changed. I'm the one who's changed the way we're operating. And can we change
Hmm.
that? You know, can we do something about that together? So it's just I think that's a really good part of the curriculum. I think that's very supportive for people because people haven't really learned those skills. I didn't. Did you?
Oh no, and I think that's when we are doing the Being the Solution course, for example. I think what we're doing really is we're kind of deconstructing the change process
Exactly.
so that we can be aware of what are the things going on, because normally change does happen whether you like it or not, and most of the time if we're not conscious, or if it's just something that happens to us, we're not, we don't since we don't expect all the elements, it becomes more difficult.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I like that. Jackie, I know you've been in a long-term relationship and you've been through many changes, like say over the last 10 years. And, you know, how did you work that out with your partner?
It just sort of happens. I mean, it certainly helps that he was also aware of the change process and has studied a lot of this material. although that's not a requirement. And I would say it's always it's always a new, it doesn't matter what you're trying to change, and then it doesn't matter what relationship you're talking about. Um, you know, there's always different elements that you have to manage or communicate or whatever it is.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think that that is a real value. I know there were couples that went through when I was teaching, and there probably have been couples since you've been teaching, right, too? And do you find that that's easier for couples if they're both taking Being the Solution, maybe not together, but around the same time?
I think it helps just because there's awareness. There's awareness of what's going on, and there's the ability to give space. There's those things. So yeah, I think it can be very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, Jackie, this has been fun. This has been fun. What should we talk about next week? We talked about the change process today. We've talked about the power pause. We talked about the power of choice. What should we talk about next week?
Good question. I know you always come up with good stuff.
I know it's helpful to me if I know before I leave one thing what I'm going to do the next week, and then I can write it. Then I can write it in my day timer, so I know what we're going to do. What's a favorite tool of yours from Being the Solution? What's one of your favorite tools? We've been talking about all of mine.
I do like the want and don't want.
That is so funny you should say that. That was actually what was in my head. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Let's talk about that next time. Want, don't want. And we can share some stories about that. I love that. That'd be great. Okay, sounds good, Jackie. Well, listen, before we go, I just want to let everybody know that you can find all about upcoming events at beingthesolution.com. You can see it down below our names, Being the Solution. So beingthesolution.com. And we do not have, today, we do not have a date and time for the next upcoming class. But if you're interested, just get in touch with me at info@beingthesolution.com. And we'll put you on that list to be one of the early bird announcements, and invite you to one of our upcoming intros when we start doing our introductions to Being the Solution again. So please let us know what you think of our conversations here in the comments down at the bottom of the page, and feel free to reach out to both Jackie and I. Okay, everybody. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you next week.
Uh-huh.
Bye now.
Bye.